History did not make room for Marie Curie. She forced it to notice her, not with authority, not with privilege, but with persistence that refused to break, even when everything around her insisted she should stop. At the turn of the century, science was not a place for women. It was guarded by tradition, hierarchy, and quiet assumptions about who was allowed to ask questions. Marie Curie entered that world carrying nothing but education, exhaustion, and an obsession with understanding what others could not yet see. She was poor, foreign, female, 3 reasons to be ignored. But Curie was not interested in permission. She was interested in truth. In dim laboratories filled with crude instruments and uncertainty, she began working with substances no one fully understood. They glowed faintly in the dark, not with heat, but with something stranger, an invisible energy that seemed to come from inside matter itself. She called it radioactivity. At the time, no one knew what it really was. Not fully. It appeared to defy existing rules. Atoms, once thought indivisible and stable, were revealing cracks, releasing energy without fire, without motion, without explanation. Marie Curie did not see danger first. She saw possibility. Radioactivity, she believed, was not a curiosity. It was a doorway, a sign that nature was more unstable and more powerful than science had ever admitted. If atoms could change from within, then the foundations of physics itself were incomplete. This was not incremental work. It was disruptive, and disruption comes at a cost. She worked endlessly, handling radioactive materials with bare hands, carrying glowing samples in her pockets, breathing dust no one yet knew to fear. There were no warnings, no protocols, no understanding of consequence, only discovery. Even as her body began to weaken, fatigue, pain, unexplained illness, Marie Curie pressed forward. Not because she was careless, but because the question mattered more than comfort. Was this devotion or sacrifice? Was it noble to give one's health for knowledge? Or was science quietly teaching its most dangerous lesson, that progress is worth any price? Marie Curie was becoming more than a scientist. She was becoming a symbol, the greatest woman in the history of science, not because she was untouched by suffering, but because she accepted it as part of the path. But as the glow of discovery brightened her legacy, it also cast a shadow she could not yet see. Because radioactivity does not announce its damage, it works silently, relentlessly, from the inside out. And long before the world understood how it truly worked, Marie Curie had already given it something irreversible, proof that discovery does not care who it consumes. Recognition arrived quietly, not as celebration, but as inevitability. Marie Curie's work could no longer be ignored. The strange energy she had named radioactivity was rewriting the rules of matter itself. Atoms were no longer stable, indivisible units. They were active, unstable, capable of changing from within. Radioactivity worked without flame, without friction. It did not burn. It decayed. Matter slowly transformed, releasing energy not because it was forced to, but because it could no longer remain the same. This was the unsettling truth Curie had uncovered. Energy did not always come from motion or heat. Sometimes it came from breakdown, from instability, from something falling apart at its core. The scientific world took notice. Papers were published. Invitations followed. Awards arrived. Marie Curie became impossible to dismiss, not as a woman, not as a foreigner, not as an assistant. She became central, the greatest woman in the history of science, not because she was elevated, but because she endured long enough to be undeniable. But as her reputation grew, her body weakened, her hands cracked and burned, fatigue deepened, pain became routine. She dismissed it as inconvenience, as distraction. There was too much work left to do. Science was finally listening. How could she stop now? Radium, the most mysterious of the substances she studied, glowed faintly, continuously. It did not rest. It did not exhaust itself quickly. And neither did Marie Curie. She carried samples with her, stored them near her workspace, kept them close, fascinated by their quiet persistence. She did not yet know that radioactivity damages living tissue in the same way it alters matter, slowly, invisibly, from the inside. The danger was not dramatic. There was no moment of alarm, only accumulation. Here, the question sharpens. If knowledge demands a price, who decides how much is acceptable? Was Marie Curie choosing sacrifice, or was science silently teaching her that discovery is worth more than the body that makes it possible? She was celebrated as proof that brilliance transcends gender, but she was also becoming proof of something darker, that progress does not warn those who carry it forward, and that some discoveries begin consuming their discoverers long before the world understands what they truly are. The world finally spoke her name. Awards followed discoveries. Recognition followed resistance. Marie Curie stood at the center of a scientific revolution that could no longer pretend she was an exception. She was the proof, undeniable, documented, permanent, that brilliance did not belong to one gender. The Nobel Prize confirmed it, but history has a cruel sense of timing. Just as the world began to celebrate her, it took something she could not replace. Pierre Curie was gone. There was no warning that mattered, no equation to soften the impact. One moment, partnership. The next, absence. The work they had shared, the conversations, the silence, the understanding, collapsed into memory. For the first time, Marie Curie faced a loss science could not explain. Grief did not stop her. It redirected her. She returned to the laboratory not because it healed her, but because it did not ask her to explain herself. There, pain had no language, only process, only repetition, only the steady discipline of work. The world expected her to slow down. She did not. She accepted Pierre's position, continued the research, taught, published, pushed forward with a resolve that unsettled even those who admired her. Was this strength, or was it escape? As her reputation grew, so did the distance between the woman the world celebrated and the woman enduring the cost. She became an icon of progress, a symbol held up as evidence that science was fair. But symbols do not feel fatigue. People do. Marie Curie's health continued to decline. Her body absorbed the consequences her era did not yet understand. The same invisible forces she studied so carefully were quietly reshaping her from within. And still, she worked. Because to stop now would mean asking a question she did not yet know how to answer. If science demands everything, what remains of the person who gives it? Marie Curie was winning history's approval, but she was losing something far more personal, and the world, eager for triumph, was not looking closely enough to notice. By now, the signs were impossible to ignore. Marie Curie's body was changing in ways rest could not repair. Pain lingered longer. Fatigue no longer passed. Simple tasks demanded effort she had never needed to consider before. For the first time, science began to look back at her. Physicians examined symptoms they did not yet understand. There was no diagnosis that could explain the slow unraveling. No language for damage that arrived without wounds. Radioactivity was still celebrated as miracle and promise, but inside her, it was already revealing its other nature. Marie Curie understood something others did not want to face. That discovery is not neutral. Radioactivity worked by transformation. Atoms breaking down, releasing energy as they changed into something else. In living tissue, that same process did not illuminate. It eroded. Cells altered, weakened, failed. The body, like matter, could be changed from within, and there was no way to reverse it. Colleagues urged caution, suggested distance, but Curie had already crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. The damage was cumulative. Time itself had become part of the experiment. Still, she continued, not because she believed herself immune, but because stopping would not undo what had already happened. Here the question sharpens beyond admiration. Is it noble to sacrifice health for knowledge, or is it a failure of science to protect those who advance it? Marie Curie did not romanticize her suffering. She did not speak of martyrdom. She simply accepted that the work mattered and that she would bear its cost. But history would later struggle with this acceptance, because if progress requires bodies to be spent quietly, then who is truly being served? Marie Curie remained at her bench, weakened but unwavering, while the world continued to praise discovery without fully counting its price. And in that silence, a dangerous precedent settled in. Marie Curie did not intend to change the world beyond science, but knowledge does not remain where it is born. As war spread across Europe, the invisible forces Curie had uncovered began to leave the laboratory and enter human history. Radioactivity was no longer just a mystery of atoms. It became a tool, a solution, a weapon against suffering. X-rays, once experimental, were rushed to the front lines. Curie herself helped design mobile radiography units, bringing invisible vision into the chaos of war. Broken bones were seen, shrapnel located, lives saved. For the first time, radioactivity was called a miracle, and Marie Curie believed in this use. If her work had caused harm, perhaps here was its redemption. Knowledge that had weakened her body could now protect others. Science, finally, was serving life, but the line between healing and exposure was thin and poorly understood. The same forces that revealed wounds were also passing through flesh, silently accumulating. Soldiers were scanned repeatedly. Operators worked without shielding. The urgency of war left no time for caution. Once again, consequences lagged behind action. Marie Curie watched her discovery take on a life of its own. It was no longer controlled by curiosity or care. It was shaped by necessity, speed, and scale. And here, the ethical question deepened. If a discovery saves lives today but harms others tomorrow, where does responsibility end? Curie had given the world a powerful insight into nature, but the world had decided how to use it. She remained convinced that knowledge itself was not the enemy. Ignorance was, misuse was, absence of care was. Still, a quiet unease followed her, because for the second time in her life, she saw science leave her hands and enter a world far less patient than she had been. And history, once again, was moving faster than understanding. Marie Curie did not see the full consequences of her work, not because she lacked intelligence, but because discovery always outruns understanding. By the end of her life, her body had become a record of exposure. Years of invisible damage had accumulated quietly, patiently, without drama. There was no single moment to point to, no clear line where sacrifice became self-destruction, only decline. She continued to work, even as strength left her, continued to teach, continued to believe that knowledge itself was innocent, that only its misuse carried blame. And yet, history would complicate that belief. Marie Curie died not from a single experiment, not from a mistake, but from devotion stretched across decades. The very phenomenon she revealed to the world had rewritten her cells long before it rewrote textbooks. She became the first person to prove something science would later have to confront openly. That progress can harm its pioneers long before it benefits humanity. After her death, her notebooks remained radioactive, her tools dangerous, her personal belongings untouchable. Even in absence, her work still carried risk. And yet, the world remembers her as a triumph. 2 Nobel Prizes, institutions bearing her name, a symbol of brilliance, resilience, and possibility. But beneath the celebration lies a quieter legacy, one that does not fit neatly into admiration. Marie Curie forces an uncomfortable question. If science advances by consuming those who push it forward, is that courage or is that failure? She was the greatest woman in the history of science, not because she was protected, but because she was not. And perhaps that is the final warning her life leaves behind. That discovery is never free, that knowledge always asks something in return, and that the cost is too often paid by those least celebrated for bearing it. What remains is not just her work, but the responsibility to ask whether the next generation of discovery will demand the same quiet sacrifice.